undeniably insane. One of the crazier games that I've ever covered, and that's saying something given the fact that I've covered the entire Shanahan-Lynch era for the 49ers. 23-20, San Francisco wins here in Tampa Bay in a game that saw both Brock Purdy and Baker Mayfield go into God mode over the final stretch. Now, Purdy was in God mode for most of the game, threw for nearly 350 yards, or maybe even a little over 350 yards, 120 rating, sets up the game-winning field goal with a 1-minute drive at the end for Jake Moody, who had missed 3 kicks preceding that. I mean, it was a special teams disaster class for the 49ers, to the point where you even had a shoving match on the sideline between Deebo Samuel and the 49ers long snapper, Tabor Pepper. I'm right outside the 49ers locker room, so going to find out what that was all about in a little bit. But it was, I mean, they made up for it. Jake Moody steps up from 44 yards out and makes up for it with the kick at the buzzer to deliver for the 49ers. Absolute insanity here. And what I have to say to sift through the craziness of this big win that pushes the 49ers to 5-4 is that great quarterbacks, elite quarterbacks, will take chaos around them and still find a way to get it done. And I think that's exactly what we saw today. Think of the chaos that surrounded the 49ers in this football game. First, the special teams basically gave Tampa Bay 16 points, 3 missed field goals and a muff punt where Darrell Luter Jr. got pushed back into Jacob Cowing, and that set up Tampa Bay's first touchdown of this game. So 16 points to spot another team on the road, especially a playoff team like the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, that's really hard to overcome. On top of that, it was a hot day here in Tampa Bay, so all of those special teams failures made it really hard for the 49ers defense to operate against the Tampa Bay team that was missing its receivers and therefore committed to ground and pound. It's really hard to play run defense against the team running power against you, running all those pitch tosses as you're wearing down in the heat. So the defense committed all those penalties, was playing sloppy football there, especially in the second half. The special teams wasn't doing the 49ers any favors. They fell behind in the fourth quarter, but Brock Purdy was able to, when push came to shove, absolutely deliver, and that is the mark of an elite quarterback. Think of the throw to Christian McCaffrey when the 49ers were down by 4 points. I believe it was 17-13. When this was at its low point for the 49ers, this was an out-and-up route for Christian McCaffrey. Brock Purdy threw the rainbow pass before either of Christian McCaffrey's 2 breaks. So he broke out and then he broke up. Purdy puts the rainbow in the air before McCaffrey even breaks out. Ultimate trust. I mean, that is a connection where you have to have an elite quarterback and you have to have an elite target. Quarterback is elite with Purdy. The target is elite with Christian McCaffrey, who looked exactly like himself after the long hiatus. He hadn't played in over 270 days. Later in that drive, Purdy escaped, and then he found George Kittle in the back corner of the end zone. Another awesome play. Kittle gets both feet inbounds. And I said after that, those 2 connections don't happen without 100% elite involvement. And that was the story of the game. The 49ers had more superstars than Tampa Bay, where I think Baker Mayfield played the best 116-yard game that you will ever see. He threw for only 116 yards, but coming down the stretch where somehow, some way, he was able to stiff arm Nick Bosa on that 4th and 7. Are you kidding me? That was one of the great QB plays that you'll ever see in the NFL. I don't want to go with too much hyperbole here, but that's what kind of battle we had. We had a prize fight, heavyweight fight, quarterbacks going blow for blow, Brock Purdy and Baker Mayfield down the stretch. And then the 49ers just kept penalizing themselves defensively. But I think that it is important to note that when push came to shove for San Francisco, they did make defensive stops. Bosa had a big sack that he made on the second to last Tampa Bay drive, right? That was a big stop for the 49ers defense after they had really struggled against the run in the heat. So he made a big sack that forced Tampa Bay to punt the football. And then when it was an end goal situation and the 49ers were up by 3 points at 20-17, they obviously couldn't afford to give up a touchdown, and they did hold against Tampa Bay. So the defense held firm. We said they would have to hold firm coming out of the bye week against the Tampa Bay offense that was missing Mike Evans and Chris Godwin, but it was really the 49ers offense that went into God mode in today's game. First, it was the Ricky Pearsall touchdown. First career touchdown for Ricky Pearsall in the first half on the crosser. Brock Purdy threw a bullet in there, really well executed for the 49ers. So just about 70 days after he got shot in the chest, Ricky Pearsall scored a touchdown in an NFL game. Absolutely fantastic story. That might be the story of the year in the NFL. Pearsall later made a couple big catches, including one on the game-winning field goal drive. Brock Purdy was throwing sideline to sideline. I get so sick of hearing Brock Purdy doesn't have arm strength. Those are people that are playing video games at home that just want to hate on Brock Purdy for no reason. The football field is over 53 yards wide. Brock Purdy's best throws today were stretching the width of the field. I mean, he found Jawan Jennings multiple times, and you have to wonder, did the 49ers pay the wrong receiver? Because Jawan Jennings is just taking over football games. And he played that X role where Brandon Ayuk had been for the 49ers before his injury. Jennings was awesome for San Francisco. Over and over again, when Purdy needed to go to somebody on a money down, it seemed that Jawan Jennings was his first look at the X spot, and he delivered. But between Pearsall, Jennings, Deebo Samuel catching some of those important crossers, and then George Kittle with spectacular plays of his own, I mean, the 49ers are loaded offensively. Bottom line is we saw two quarterbacks, I think, play great in crunch time today, but Brock Purdy did have the weapons advantage over Baker Mayfield, especially with no Godwin and no Evans. All of that said, 49ers defense delivering when it needed to, despite the fact that they were worn down by the end. The offense, obviously, firing on all cylinders to close this game. Despite that, though, the special teams, it's got to change. We thought coming off the game against Dallas, the Cowboys had the #1 special teams unit, and the 49ers special teams actually outplayed them. We thought that the 49ers might have solved the issue. Apparently not. Now, a lot of the damage today came from Jake Moody, who was coming off the high ankle sprain, and he missed the 3 field goals. The 49ers still trusted him there at the end. I mean, they had to. I don't think that they were just going to run the offense out there until the clock expired. So they needed Jake Moody to make the game winner, and he did. And I think that's huge, not just for Moody, but for the entire locker room when you saw the Deebo Samuel Tabor Pepper incident. And again, I'm about to head into the 49ers locker room and ask about that. But we can't ignore what happened before the game-winning field goal. We can't ignore the 3 missed field goals. The 49ers are going to have to hope that Moody, in his first game returning from the high ankle sprain, was simply knocking off some rust. And we can't ignore yet another disaster on the muffed punt, which it's hard to blame Jacob Cowing, but it's a unit-wide failure when Darrell Luter Jr. is getting pushed into Cowing to force the muff. It's 16 points that the 49ers gave up on special teams. Now, they made up a little bit when Jacob Cowing delivered that great punt return. I think it was 31 yards in the fourth quarter to set up one of the 49ers scoring drives. So maybe conservatively, the special teams cost the 49ers about 13 points in this game. It's still 2 touchdowns worth of damage caused by the 49ers special teams. There's no way to sugarcoat that. They won the game by 3, 2 touchdowns worth of damage. So say 14 points worth of damage, 13 points worth of damage. They would have won the game by 16 if you just do simple math. I predicted a 31-13 49ers win. That's a 17-point win, right? So my margin was correct if I had not, but I did not account for the special teams. Just shows you how big of a negative difference maker that phase of the game has been for the 49ers. And they have to, absolutely have to. It is imperative that they figure out a way to turn around what has been a brutal start to the season on special teams. It's the only thing that got Tampa Bay close in this game, because what happened is it was hot. It was 85 degrees, Florida heat here in November. The 49ers defense is put into terrible spots if they have to keep on trotting back out there, especially against a team that's so committed to the ground and pound. If you build a lead, which the 49ers offense, I think, did well enough to do, if you build a lead, Tampa can't run the ball the way that they did. And the 49ers defense can look a whole lot better. So because the special teams muffed the punt, because they're missing the field goals, that puts the 49ers defense in a much tougher position because the game is close and Tampa Bay can run. You see how it's all connected? So that if there's one massive negative from this game, it's that third phase of the game, and it cannot be emphasized enough. Big picture, though, 49ers have an elite offense. Christian McCaffrey returning into the fold opens up the checkdowns for the 49ers again, and not just the checkdowns, the explosive passes too. I mean, that out and up that they threw to McCaffrey was absolutely elite stuff. McCaffrey, there are plays that it's like 2nd and 15, and McCaffrey catches the check down and picks up 8 yards, and People aren't going to make a big deal out of those plays, but they're massive, massive contributions because 3rd and 7 is a whole lot different than 3rd and 11 or 3rd and 10, or even worse, 3rd and 15. When you have that trust in your security blanket, like the 49ers and Brock Purdy do and Christian McCaffrey, it changes the entire dynamic of the game. And the spacing on the field looked a lot like it did over the past 2 seasons with McCaffrey in there. And I think the 49ers offense is ready to meet the goal that we talked about, which is a roar back into the top 2, top 3 in the NFL. They currently been number 6 or number 7. They have all the tools to be able to do that, even without Brandon Ayuk, given the fact that you see Juwan Jennings playing that well. Defensively, I really think that the 49ers have what they need. I mean, they stopped the Bucs when they absolutely needed to in this game. They got that big sack when they absolutely needed to in this game. Baker Mayfield went into God mode. You got to give him credit. He staved off Nick Bosa. We're going to ask about that when I talk to Nick Bosa, how Baker Mayfield, that was like his revenge for the Nick Bosa flag plant revenge. I mean, they've had a back and forth going around for a while. I guess they're on more cordial terms now, but I'm sure that felt good for Baker Mayfield. But outside of, that super play from the Bucs and a couple of those penalties, you can't go out and say it was a horrific performance from the 49ers defense. What you can say, though, is that the special teams put the 49ers in a terrible spot. And it just goes to show you how important that third phase of the game is. So 23-20, 49ers win. They are now 5-4 for the first time this season. The 49ers have won consecutive games. I know that's hard to believe, but a team that relies on swagger, where that complementary football clicks when the 49ers are doing well, I think it is important to start stacking wins. And they have now straddled the bye week with wins. One against the Cowboys, closer than it had to be. One against the Bucs, I think this was closer than it had to be, but it is a win, and it sets up this next game at home against the Seattle Seahawks, a really big divisional game on November 17th, which is next Sunday. So that's the 49ers could stack it to 3 in a row. And if they could get it to 6-4, and they're going to be favored to do that at home against Seattle, then what we're going to be looking at is them really well positioned, probably in first place in the NFC West, entering that back-to-back stretch against the Green Bay Packers and the Buffalo Bills, where I think the 49ers will have to win at least one of 2 to maintain their really good position. So right now they're in really good position. I thought that they showed out, again, Purdy is elite. They've got one of the best quarterbacks in the game. That's huge. Even with everything stacked against them, Brock Purdy delivered time and time again. Some beautiful throws, some beautiful scrambles. I don't think he was particularly sharp at the start of the game. He was missing high a little bit, but the answers to some of those blitz packages have been there for the 49ers now. I think it helps to have Christian McCaffrey as part of your 5 eligibles. And with Purdy and that offensive weaponry in place, the 49ers can go a long way. Then it's about how much can they congeal on defense, and will the special teams just not screw things up? Today, the special teams got really close to screwing things up, but they made amends at the very end when Jake Moody knocked through that 44-yard field goal. One of the more insane 49ers games that I've covered in my 8 years. Just the ebbs and flows, the performances from the superstars, Kittle, Purdy, McCaffrey, crazy stuff. And the 49ers now need to tighten up the screws at the margins, and special teams definitely is one of those margins. All right, I'm about to head into the locker room. 49ers 23, Bucs 20. A big win in Tampa Bay for the first time this year. The 49ers have won consecutive games.